Karen Gaskill. She's a CPA and payroll tax manager at Delhaize America. That's the parent company of Food Lion. And you've probably seen their big headquarters out there off of Jake Alexander. She's a 1992 Catawba grad. She met her soulmate here at Catawba. They have three wonderful daughters. One is a Catawba grad, one is here now, and her third one is a potential prospective student. She's 11. So Karen's going to talk about make your own future. There is a future out there, but you need to make it yourself. So thank you. Karen.
Sure, thank you. Jessica, our 2012 graduate from Catawba, is here, and I appreciate you being here. Lauren was sick tonight, so she did us all a favor and stayed home. So, or she went home, so she actually took whatever was in the dorm with her, I'm sure, and so I'm kind of concerned about that. But I was actually thrilled to get this topic about making a good impression at work and having a good work ethic. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions about work, and I've heard it here tonight. You know, we all come to college to get a degree, and we think that with all the money we've spent, it's all automatically going to translate into this fabulous job, wonderful career. And if you're doing something you love, chances are that's going to happen. But you're going to have to start somewhere. And I suggest that you start at the entry-level position, because you have permission to learn in that role. People expect you to make mistakes. You have the opportunity to learn from those mistakes. I actually told one of my bosses, I'm pretty open-minded and frank and pretty transparent, and I told my boss one time that I'm going to be one of the smartest people there because I had made the most mistakes, and I was learning from them all. And he actually appreciated that, because people don't typically mind if you make mistakes. They want you to own up to them and own them and learn from them. And as long as you don't continue, you know, sometimes, and I've even told folks that I work with that we celebrate mistakes, because, I mean, what else are you going to do? Cry over them? So if you celebrate a mistake, that is taking the opportunity to stop and say, why did this happen? What was the root cause? And devise a solution. So not only learning from that experience and fixing it, but it's also fixing it for the long term. And sometimes that's had, more often than not, that's had breakthrough consequences for us. It's how new knowledge is sometimes discovered and issues in the process. So if you take that entry-level position, learn from your mistakes, you'll have that personal growth opportunity that others may miss, that maybe came in at a different level and maybe had to pretend that they knew stuff that they didn't know. That's never a good place to be. You always want to be yourself and be allowed to grow and make mistakes. And someone else said tonight about competing only with yourself. Work is not a competitive sport. If you spend your time competing with other people that you work with, you are wasting resources, and the company is not paying for that. However, if you're a team player and you treat it as a team sport, you can always be more successful. One of my favorite sayings, and I heard it a long time ago in my career, but I decided in the interest of academia that I would look up the source. And I learned that Harry Truman actually said it. It's amazing what can be accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. Because if you're doing your work and you know, honoring yourself through your work and doing the right things right, that's different than doing just something right. But if you're doing the right things right, you're going to get the credit eventually. And it really doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as you're all making progress. And if you've been on sports teams and all that, you know, and any kind of work with groups and stuff. It's always good to work as a team and not care who gets the credit. Along those same lines, we've heard another common theme tonight, that no job should be beneath you, no task is too small. I began my career with the same firm Keena did, but I was in the Charlotte office, which I didn't know at the time was a kind of a, I don't know, sweatshop we called it, because we worked so much. But so I began my career, like Keena said, the accounting profession is a very, there's a set progression. And at that time, all the rookies started the same day, on September 1st. So prior to getting my degree in accounting, I did not know any accountants. I was the first one in my family to come to college. My mom had worked in payroll at a manufacturing company, and all she knew was that the CPA got a whole lot more money than she did to review her work once a year. So I didn't know really what to expect, except that I had talked with a lot of people through information interviewing, which is why I went into public accounting to start with, and I'll be happy, that's a whole nother story, and I've already shared it with one student tonight. But so I started my career. I walk in on September 1st, on time, of course, in the city of Charlotte, had to park, navigate that whole thing, get downtown to my office on the 29th floor, and I meet my cohorts. 2 of them had been recruited from Davidson College to go to Chapel Hill to get their master's degree in accounting, which was paid for by the firm. The other was from Indiana University, and then there was me. Well, you know, we all started at the same place. We went through, I think, a week of training, and then we went out to our desk and sat there until somebody gave us something to do. Because we all knew what the schedule was, and we were all set to go out on an audit job soon, which would mean we would go to our first client. But until then, we had to figure out how to work the fax machine, which was one of the most intimidating things I'd ever seen in my life at that point. Luckily, you guys will probably just scan it and send it on, and you know how to do that. But for me, the fax machine was something I had never seen. And then we were making copies. And the other folks seemed to think that they didn't go to college to make copies. I was standing at the copier going, I can't believe I'm getting paid to make copies. And, by the way, these are going to be the best darn copies anyone has ever seen. And, you know, I don't think that I do remember thinking those 2 distinct things, but thinking back on it as I was preparing for this, you know, I mean, we've all gotten copies that we couldn't read before, right? That, especially when they're made from a book and the crease wasn't just right and all that. If you're a partner in an accounting firm, you don't want to send something out to your client. And this was, I do have an iPhone. I'm not the oldest one here, but at that time we had no internet. We did not have email, so we did have copiers and fax machines and all that good stuff. But, you know, I was just thinking, I'm getting paid to make these copies. It's going to be the best darn copies anybody's ever seen. And, you know, I did my work, and I certainly didn't want to be asked to do that over. It's a copy, for goodness sakes. If you can't do that, you might as well go home. The other thing that I found myself doing a lot of was proofreading reports and stuff before they went out to the clients. And after finding several mistakes, because it's not rocket science, you take last year's report, you put in this year's numbers and move all the dates and all that kind of stuff, and it flows. But if you miss changing a year or whatever, then you might put out a report that says something about, let's see, this was in 1992, so it might say something about 1978, and the report is about 1991 and 92. So, and I found some mistakes, something like that. So I found myself constantly busy with work to do, partners bringing me stuff and managers bringing me stuff, while the people I started with were looking for stuff to do. And by the summer, because we all started in September, we went through one busy season. by the summer, I was being asked to in charge my own jobs, which was go out to the client by myself and run this job by myself. And the other people were taking time off because they weren't on any jobs. So Catawba will prepare you for whatever it is, as long as you do your work as well. But once you get out there, if it's making copies, proofreading, whatever the entry-level stuff may be, do it to the best of your ability, because it might just be the test to see what you can be entrusted with. And as I look back on it, I suspect that's what it was. You know, they said, Karen takes a lot of pride in her work and makes the best darn copies I've ever seen. So, you know, I think that we can send her out to the banking clients and, you know, the kind of key stuff. So it really did fast track my career without even knowing it. So that's one thing I would say. One piece of advice I got early on in my career was that my job was to make my manager's job easier. That was excellent advice that served well then. I've actually, as I've become a manager and a senior leader, it's my job to make my folks' job, the people who report to me and work with me, it's my job to make their job easier too, because I have a lot of resources that I know about through my interactions with different levels, and they bring a lot to the table. And if we can share information, because believe it or not, there are people who think that having knowledge is power, and keeping that to themselves makes them more valuable. But you will find that that's not the case, because if you share that information, and I like the analogy of coming from, like your analogy, the glass half full, but you know, we tend to think of resources as scarce, but if we really come from a place of abundance where there's enough for everybody to go around, then we actually create more. And when you're creating more, just like someone said before, there's more money for raises, there's more room for promotions, there's just more of everything. So so that is something I would tell you to do as well. And so the last thing, as far as making your own future, not being entitled to it, you really have to know yourself and seek out opportunities for self-development. Like I said, if you start in an entry-level position, you're going to have people willing to help you, and the expectation is that you need help and all of that. The suggestion to get a mentor is an excellent one. But be deliberate about really knowing who you are and what your strengths are, and sell those. Tell people about them, and what your weaknesses are, and get people to help you work on those. Get people to help you notice when your weakness is coming out. And you know, if you can get 360-degree feedback, in other words, from people you work with, people who report to you once you get to that level, and as well as from your managers and all, just the more you know about yourself, and the willingness to be human and accept criticism. I tell my daughters all the time, you know, the youngest is in competitive dancing right now. And she just started, and, you know, her teacher tells us that, you know, if I tell her feet stink, she's going to say, thank you. And I guess in dance, your feet stinking really mean they're not pointed or something. But anyway, I didn't think that because I rode home with her. But anyway, you know, if somebody cares enough about you to correct you, it usually means that they see something in you and that you are worth it, and that they see potential for you to be successful, and they want you to be successful. So if someone criticizes you, hopefully it's constructive criticism, but even if it's not the most tactful thing, learn from it and be willing to at least ask yourself, why did they say that? Maybe that's not the way I meant it, but perception, as we've heard, is reality. And if somebody's making that point, then it may be something that you need to correct. So just take it as a gift. And so I guess, to bring it all around, really a positive attitude about what you do, loving what you do, is key in the career path as well as life in general. So it's really nothing new, but hopefully something that will help you in your path.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.